Hello, I'm Greg Harrison with the USDA Market News Service here in St. Joe, Missouri with your national feeder cattle summary this week. Well, looking at cattle prices this week compared to last week, calf market this week took a pretty good tumble, trading mostly $10 to $20 lower on calves, and there's spots where it's $25 to $30 lower, especially through the southeast, southern plains, and through the Midwest. Yearlings this week trading $5 to mostly $10 lower. Order buyers this week were extremely cautious after the aggressive selling pressure we saw in the stock market, taking a big tumble going back late last week and through early part of this week, and it just put a lot of pressure on outside markets, and it kept the strain on all the commodity markets. Had order buyers pretty much, after all the big sell-off this week, needing and wanting to buy feeder cattle cheaper this week. Cattle complex remains pretty much focused on the ability for outside markets to stabilize and to steady themselves, and demand for calves this week were pretty much light to moderate. It was best on yearling cattle, and that was mostly in the northern plains. Several auctions this week also getting ready for the fall run noted several strings and balling calves coming to market, especially at Oklahoma City. And with the markets tumbling lower, this just pretty much, you can going back to last week also, just seeing some corrections coming in the feeder cattle prices. Feeder cattle also feeling the pressure of fed cattle prices also lower. Just a lot of fed cattle prices retreating back to the summer lows. Last week, live trades was mostly 146 to 149, and dress sales ranged from 232 to 234. They were all lower. And got many backgrounders and summer grazers who have already sold their yearlings this year, but there's still a lot of yearlings out there, and usually this time of year we'll see kind of a rally in the feeder cattle market and yearling market, and right now it looks like that rally is pretty distant. You look at a yearling steer weighing 900 pounds, and right now he's trading both sides of $2, and that also includes a lot of 8-weight steers, and that's really $12, $15 lower than what it was earlier in the summer. Fed cattle prices, with seeing them retreat, really has the cattle feeder just adjusting to what he's going to pay for feeder cattle at this time. And so far this year, we've seen feeder cattle prices really too high in comparison to the fed cattle prices. But despite a lot of these low prices this week, looking at some yearling sales in the northern plains, especially in Nebraska, they had some good yearling sales this week, selling with good demand. In Rushville, Nebraska, on Wednesday at the Sheridan Livestock Auction, they sold right at 3,700 head of yearling steers. They had 465 steers averaging 835 pounds. It sold with a weighted average price of $206.23, and it sold 120 fancy steers weighing 950 pounds at $207. In Kearney, Nebraska, on Wednesday, they sold 620 head of steers averaging 909 pounds, and they sold with a weighted average price of $206.02. And in the northern plains and through the western corn belt, they have expectations of a large corn crop coming on. They got a lot of farmer feeders in the mood to buy yearlings, and so it was pretty good demand there in the northern plains. Main focus this week pretty much has been on the stock market and its sell-off and the effects of early in the week. You saw a lot of panic selling and just a get-me-out attitude, and just makes livestock markets vulnerable, and a lot of funds in the market just have turned to sellers, and it just to reduce their exposure in the commodities. But on Wednesday, we saw the stock market gain 620 points. That was the third biggest point gain in the Dow history. And that kind of spilled over into Thursday, where we saw cattle futures catch a break. And on Thursday, live cattle and feeder cattle both all traded with strong triple-digit gains of between $2 and $3. So hopefully they're finding some footing there and can build on that. And hopefully that can spill over into the feeder cattle market. So that's your markets for this week. Thanks for listening. Be back with you next week.